I want to go over each of the different parts of the sentence really quickly, and then we'll go over the answers to the test as well. So let's start with a really simple sentence. Let's start with the sentence, the dog eats. Okay, so in the sentence we have a subject, which is dog, and we have a verb, which is eats. So how do we find the subject? We ask who or what is the sentence about? The sentence is about a dog. And what is the dog doing? The dog is eating. So that's how we find the verb. Another word for verb is predicate. So the simple subject is dog and the simple predicate is eats. How do we know that? If you had, say, a more complex sentence, we could divide it between the subject and the verb. And this whole part on this side is usually the simple subject, and this whole part on this side actually that's the complete subject, and this is the complete predicate. The simple subject is just the subject itself, and the simple predicate is just the verb itself. Okay, now if we say what the dog is eating, so we could say the dog eats food, now we've added on a direct object. Okay, the direct object tells us what is being eaten. So we could say the dog eats what? The dog eats food. So that's the direct object. This sentence is in active voice. Why is it active voice? Because the subject is the one doing the action. If we change this sentence around and we said the food is eaten by the dog, now suddenly we have a subject that is not doing the action. The food is not the one eating, the dog is eating. So since we flipped the order and the emphasis is not on the person doing the action or the object doing the action, now we have a passive sentence. Okay? So an active sentence just means that the subject is the one doing the action. Okay, so there's that. Now let's make this a little bit more complex. Let's say the dog eats the food on the table. So what is on the table? On the table is a prepositional phrase. Really, the only way you can know what a prepositional phrase is by memorizing the prepositions. So that's something that you might want to do. Look that up in your book and start and memorize those. There's about 50 or 60 of them. Another thing that one of my teachers showed us when I was in junior high is, let's say you take a box. Pretty much anything you can do to the box is a preposition. So you can sit on the box, you can go under the box, behind the box, through the box, in the box, etc. So you can go around the box. All of those things are prepositions. All of those words are prepositions. So they kind of tell you, they give you a relationship. Okay, so that's a prepositional phrase. Now let's say we give the dog a name. So let's say the dog Snowy eats the food on the table. Okay, so now we've given the dog a name. We've renamed this noun. So Snowy is the same thing as dog. They're the same. That is an appositive. So what an appositive does is it renames another noun. Okay, so that's fairly simple. Let's see, when does the dog eat the food on the table? When he is hungry. When he is hungry is an adverbial clause. Okay, so an adverbial clause is functions the same as an adverb. An adverb modifies a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. So it tells us something about the verb. When does he eat? He eats when he is hungry. So we have this whole clause here is an adverbial clause. And what we have, it's a subordinate clause because it can't stand alone. We can't just say when he is hungry. That would be incomplete because we have this kind of question word right there. So when we have that, and there are a few different words that are triggers for an adverbial clause, and you can look that up too, but that tells us something about the verb. So that's how we know it's an adverbial clause. Now, something I want you to notice here, he is hungry is another kind of mini sentence that could stand on its own. Is a be verb, and a be verb is followed by a subject complement. So a subject complement tells us something about the subject. It describes the subject, and that could be a noun or an adjective. Okay, in this case it's an adjective, he is hungry. If we said he is a dog, then dog would be the subject complement. Okay, so you're just looking for those be verbs, and whatever's on the other side of that that tells us something about the subject, that's a subject complement. Okay, now, if we said let's add an absolute phrase. So an absolute phrase usually has a noun and some form of a verb, but it's not a complete sentence, and it's set off by commas, and it tells us something about the whole sentence. So if we said something like, his owner's gone, the dog eats off the table. His owner's gone is an absolute phrase. Okay, and again, usually it's at the beginning of the sentence, but it doesn't have to be necessarily. Okay, so one last thing that we need to cover is a noun clause, a subordinate noun clause. So a subordinate noun clause functions the same as a noun, which means that it can be a subject, a direct object, an object of the preposition, anything that a noun can do, only it's a complete phrase, not just a noun by itself. Okay, so let's say the dog, sorry about my handwriting, eats what he finds. The dog eats what he finds. What does the dog eat? We have subject, verb. What does the dog eat? He eats what he finds. So this whole phrase or clause functions as a direct object. So since it functions as a direct object, which is a noun, job, we know that this is a noun clause or a nominal clause. Okay, so the dog eats what he finds. All right, so there was a quick and dirty lesson on the different parts of a sentence.